I'm Jackie, and this is Michelle, and welcome to the Dating Games. Between the two of us, we've wrapped up 47 years of marriage, raised teenage kids, and for Michelle, adult. And post divorce, in our 40s and beyond, we are now diving back into that dating pool once again. And we've decided to do so with a sense of adventure, frivolity, and the mantra which we echo, which is it's not about him, it's about you. We will also be sharing our stories, our lessons learned, and the many laughs we've had along the way, helping you navigate your dating journey. And today we'll be kicking our topic off with the bill. Who pays? He pays, she pays, or we split the bill. And what does it all mean?
It's a super interesting topic, Jackie. I've seen many people who have conversations about it across podcasts, across various dating sites. And I think to me, the critical thing is it's not that there's one answer. It's a lot
Correct.
back to how do you feel? How have you arrived at this moment? What does it say about
Yes,
the interaction you're having?
absolutely. So, Michelle, why don't you dive in and tell us about your bill experience? Do you remember we discussed it within the Thai restaurant?
Yes, it was a very interesting, and again, all of these experiences I just take as learnings. And so
Absolutely.
sometimes learnings you feel after the fact like, oh, maybe I should have done that or handled that a little differently. But that's the point. We're practicing, right? So
Yes.
my experience was having a first date with a man, and
Yes.
he was at the time a visitor to Phuket. And
Yes.
so he was off doing lots of tourist things, and we had agreed to meet at a particular time at a restaurant that would be convenient for him because he was off doing something and he'd have to get back. And then, oh, the time shifted. And so then it got a bit later. And so there were all these sort of accommodations that happened from me ahead of time. But it was absolutely fine. We
Yes.
met, he was there, dressed nicely. We had great conversation, had a couple drinks and had some food. And
Yes.
as the evening was sort of winding down, at some point the waiter came by to clear up the food dishes.
Yes.
And so as he was doing this, he also, the waiter said in Thai, "Do you want anything else?" And I
Mhm.
said in Thai back to him, "Oh, maybe just the bill," because now
Yes.
it was getting late. But I kind
Yes.
of, this is the part I was sort of self-censoring later. I jumped to asking for the bill. And I probably wouldn't do that now. But anyway,
Why, before you continue, tell us why you decided to jump in for the bill.
it just, well, first of all, as I said, it was late. Now it's like 10:30. But I think also it just felt natural to me in the sense that the waiter is there, he's clearing up dishes, he's asking, "Do you want anything else?"
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I don't really know why I said that. But I'm like, "How about the bill?" But my
Okay.
date didn't realize that that's what had transpired. A few
Yes.
minutes later, the bill arrives, and naturally, it comes to me because I asked for the bill.
Yes.
And so that's when I realized my mistake in that now there's a little bit of a, oh, who's going to
Mhm.
pay?
Yes.
And while I have fairly open views about who pays or whether we split the bill, at this
Yeah.
moment I realized that I was now and stuck in the sense where I paused with my hand over the bill and I said, waiting to see if he would jump in,
Yes.
and then he didn't.
Did he?
And th-
Oh, excuse me. Apologies.
and then he didn't jump in.
Yes.
And so then I said, "Shall we split the bill then?" And he said, "Yes, if that's okay." So
Yeah.
clearly,
Okay.
that's honestly what he wanted to do anyway, right?
Yes.
So this was going to be his default. But at that moment, I felt like I really hadn't given him that opportunity.
Mhm.
So in the end, we split the bill.
Okay.
So the challenge for me later thinking about this was that I had made a decision about the way the date was going to go, and
Yes.
didn't I don't want to do that in the future. And that's the
Mm,
decision I made. I don't have a
mhm.
particularly strong feeling about who should pay. And I know that we
Right.
differ a little bit on this. I've spent
We do.
25 years in the corporate world where I was had to be a particular kind of person
Yes.
and had to show my strength, show my professionalism. And I've also have strong feelings about just the equality of the two of men and
Yes.
women. As much as
Yes.
I love gentleman behavior and all of that, I'm not necessarily expecting someone to pick up the bill for me. And so
Yeah.
I'm generally okay with sharing. But in this case, I wish I had let it sort of unravel a little differently.
And after you guys split the bill, did you see each other?
We did not. At that moment, we separated. He was
Right.
going off to continue his travels. He sent me a few pictures of himself and his son. And yeah, we didn't really continue our
Okay.
conversations.
So it
But,
ended there.
and I think as you
Yep.
and I talked, I think for me, this became a much deeper feeling or discussion about generosity and the
Yes.
idea about generosity can be in spirit, it can be in time, it can be in
Yes.
attention, it can be in money, it can be in many ways. But in this
Yeah.
case, I later felt that maybe I hadn't allowed him to be his, maybe he wouldn't have offered. But in this case,
Maybe.
I sort of shortcutted any opportunity, and in the future, I
Yeah.
resolved to allow generosity to flow, at least give them a
Absolutely.
chance.
Absolutely. And you need to grant a man the space to do that.
Yes.
Because if you don't, like you said, you've just shortcut that potential of
Mm,
generosity, masculine generosity
yeah,
immediately.
absolutely.
So, as you know, my experiences have been completely different. I will not ever pick up a bill on a first date.
Now just the
Um,
first date.
and the second, and the third, and the fourth, unless there's an emergency of some sort. So for me, I was describing to Michelle an amazing lunch that I had with a gentleman, Gabriel. And when the bill arrived, because Michelle and I had had so many conversations about the bill, who pays? Do I pay? Do we share the bill? Does he pay? And I said to her, right, I am going to be open to pick up the bill and see how that feels. I will not be doing that again ever. So generally, when I am invited out for lunch or dinner, it is my date that picks up the bill, that pays for the bill, and then we move off. And my reason for doing that, quite frankly, and this is a personal reason, because like
Mm,
Michelle said, it's about how you feel at the end of the day. And it's about what makes you feel comfortable. I, for example, have never ever gone out on a coffee date, and I probably won't because I put a lot of time and effort into preparing myself for a date, whether it's nails, hair, wax, sometimes a new outfit, new top, whatever the case may be. And so I don't feel the need to pick up the bill. And I think it's also, we are not friends. You've asked me out, you've invited me. The least you can do is pay the bill. As Michelle mentioned, there is the topic of generosity and effort.
yeah.
So for me, generosity, effort, and being a gentleman is really important. And for me personally, if you can't set that standard on day one, then I don't know how we're going to move forward date two, three, four, or five.
Mm, mm,
And so what happened was I went out and with this thought of, hey, let's see what it feels like to pay the bill. I went out, we had lunch, and when we were finishing the meal, and the waiter asked, would you like anything else? My dad said, yes, may we have the bill, please? And when he arrived, I indicated that I'll pay for the bill. And Gabriel said, he looked at me very shocked and he said, what are you doing? Why would you want to pay the bill? I've invited you out for lunch. I'm happy to pay the bill. And I said, oh, no, it's fine. Don't worry. By then it was our third date already. And I said, oh, it's fine. Don't worry. I'll pick it up. And I did. And I didn't like it. I didn't like the feeling at all. And in fact, it became such a thing between the two of us that after I paid, my date actually said, hey, can we just cancel that payment and I'll pay? And then the waiter said, no, I'm sorry, it's gone through already. And he then said, fine, you can pay this bill on condition that the next 5, 6 dates, I will be picking up the tab every
no,
time,
lovely.
which is absolutely beautiful.
Yes.
But it does go to the point, and this is what Michelle and I have been discussing regularly. And I know many other podcasters are doing the same. Generosity. This is a date. We are not friends, especially on a first date. So, what are your thoughts, Michelle?
I think I'm still struggling in my equality moment because I think, and as we've discussed, I think as women, and certainly as women now in our late 40s and late 50s,
Yes.
we don't need that kind of financial support, right? We are financially independent. And so I think when some of these customs were put in place, women didn't have any money and they were pretty
Correct.
much at the, what am I thinking? They were vulnerable or they didn't have the strength or the wherewithal to be able to pay for things. And so that
Yes.
men obviously had to do this. Women couldn't have credit cards, they couldn't have bank accounts back in the day, right?
Yes.
And so in some ways, my feeling is that as an independent career woman, whatever we have done, whoever we've become, we want
Mm.
this independence and this strength to come through. And so if we continue to hold the standard of expectation
Yes.
from the olden days in a way that it's kind of like we're having our cake and eating it too, right? I want to be treated as a CEO in the boardroom, but when I go on a date, no matter how many billions I have in the bank, I want the guy to pay. And somehow
Yes.
in my head, I still have trouble with that computation. And it doesn't mean, I mean,
Why?
because it doesn't feel like I am being, it feels hypocritical if I just use that word. It feels like I want you to treat me in this way over here, and then I want you to treat me in that way over there. And again, as we've said several times already, it's a very personal thing.
Yes.
And I'm also on a journey where
Mm.
as I said, I thought about how I acted, how I didn't allow him to take the lead
Yes.
when he in fact had asked me on the date and I had sort of barged in
Yes.
and
Yes.
and I was just my, I don't know, my practical self. And
Yes.
that's not where I want to be. And
Yeah.
so it's a continuing conversation in my head.
It is a continuing conversation, but you've actually actioned some of those thoughts. So why don't you share that with our dames as well? Because you had a beautiful date, and I remember it clearly. There was champagne and there was
Oh,
oysters involved. And guess what? Michelle didn't pay
she
the
didn't pay.
bill.
You're absolutely right. I
Yes.
learned from my experience and all of our conversations, and it was a lovely date. I met another man, and we got to this nice restaurant, and he was holding the menu, and I said, "Oh yeah, maybe a glass of wine would be nice." And he's looking at
Yes.
it, and he said, "A glass of wine, or how about some bubbles? Would you like some bubbles?" And I
Yeah.
was like, "Sure." Love some bubbles. And then a bit of time passed, and then we were talking about having some appetizers. And again, he was holding the menu. I looked over at it and I went, "Oh, yeah, that looks nice." And in the end, he selected some things, and they were great.
Yes.
And I was totally happy. I'm really not very picky about those things, but I enabled or I
Yes.
allowed him to make that choice. And then I felt a bit different too at the
Mm.
end because when he then said, "I will pay the bill," I was like, "Oh, of course you will," because you made all
Mm.
the, because in that
Of
situation,
course, why not?
he made a lot of the choices. And not that I felt
Yes.
disempowered, but I felt maybe more relaxed about the fact that he had been kind of leading. And then in this situation, he could lead as well. And
Yes.
I feel absolutely fine. Often, if someone says, "I'll pay," and I say, "Oh, are you sure?" And if they
Yeah.
say, "Yes, absolutely," of course, I don't fight
Yeah.
them. I'm not wrestling on the ground. It's me. So that's not my style, but generally,
Yeah.
it feels like out of courtesy to ask, "Oh, are you sure?" Or "That would
Yes.
be lovely. Thank you so much." That's my typical response.
There are two things that we'll never fight about, and that's who does the dishes and who pays the bills.
And who does the dishes?
In our home,
Yeah.
everybody.
Oh, yeah. But why will you not fight about who does the dishes? Come from? Where are we
Because it's like
going?
the bit, if somebody offers to do it,
Oh, I
you
see.
understand.
And in my house, the rule was always whoever did the cooking doesn't do the
Yes.
dishes.
Yes, absolutely.
And no one
Absolutely.
ever
So this
offers. It has to be a rule. No one is offering.
exactly. So this is really interesting, but there's two other points that I really want to
Yes.
highlight. So Michelle mentioned earlier about this old-fashioned perspective, right? This old-fashioned view about, of course, women didn't have credit cards, didn't have bank accounts, and
Mm.
so the economic dependency lay
Yes.
upon responsibility was awarded to a man, right?
Mm.
That's very different nowadays. We have our own bank accounts, everybody has their own credit cards. The idea of that not being the case doesn't even enter our minds
Right.
nowadays.
Right.
But what was interesting is that a lot of our listeners are very strong corporate women. And so my perspective is always the person you are in the boardroom is very different to the person
Can
you
be.
are
Yes.
in the bedroom and is very different to the person you are on a
Mm.
date.
Yes.
So, Michelle, because our views are very strong, our opposing views are very strong with regards to this.
Mm.
I really want you to think about, so that's one view, right?
Mm. Mm.
The other perspective that I have is always a man paying the bill is not a man paying for sex. I'm going to repeat that. A man paying the bill for food is not a man paying the bill for sex. If he's paying for the bill for sex, there's a lot more money to be discussed. So,
Dinner.
much more expensive. So, I want us to also talk to the women who are out there, like yourself, very strong, corporate leaders, kick ass in the boardroom. How do we enlighten or share the opportunity of it's fine to be feminine, tapping into that energy when you're on a date? There is nothing to prove to a man
Yes.
your worth. There is absolutely nothing to prove. So, what holds us back from allowing that space and
Mm.
allowing that masculine energy to come fulfilled? What are
Yeah.
your thoughts on that?
Yeah, no, I think that's absolutely right. And I think we've had some conversations about that to some
We have,
extent
yeah.
when you, again, as I said, 25 years of corporate life and you're in there and you're fighting
Yes,
for things and your team and you want to be seen as competent and successful. And you do
correct.
that all day, 8 hours a day and 9, 10 hours a day. And then you
Yeah.
drive home to your house where you become mother and sensual wife. And sometimes that juggling act, or the COO of your own house, that juggling act can be
Mm,
very, very difficult. And I think
absolutely.
that to some extent, I definitely feel that I fell into that challenge where exploring and embracing and allowing that feminine side to, I don't know, to be embraced,
Manifest.
to manifest,
Yes.
it
To come to
became
fruition.
it became very difficult because the juggling act
Yes.
is constant, and you can't in 5 minutes go from one to the other. And if you spend
No.
most of your day thinking in one way, it's very, very difficult. But to the point we've made, now we're in our 40s and 50s. We don't, for the most part, have kids to raise. Some of us have completed our corporate journeys, and
Yes.
to re-embrace that feminine side and that feminine power
Absolutely.
is
Mm,
amazing. And
yes.
it takes practice, though.
Yes, it does take practice. Flirting, again, takes practice. Even something as simple as touching your hand takes practice because you're allowing a feminine energy to flow
Mm,
through yourself,
mm, mm.
which, like you said, when you're in the boardroom, does not exist at all. And so, yes, all these new skills do take practice. And it's really important for women out there, for our dating day, to be open to the idea of practicing. I, for example, have very strong views about paying a bill, but I tried it one day. I thought, hey, let's just give it a try and see how it works. So
I'm
it
going to
worked
wait for the
immediately.
day when you offer to split the bill. That'll be even more exciting.
Oh my good heavens. But it doesn't work for me. Now, it doesn't work. It just means it doesn't work for me. And I
Yeah,
don't
and
feel
the people that you're dating or what, I think it's about that vibe as well, who
today.
you're with.
Yes, context plays for an awful lot.
Mm.
I think at the end of the day, if you feel happy with whether you pay the bill or he pays the bill or you split the bill, depending on the context and how you are as a woman, what makes you happy is key. And you need to remember that. If this episode has sparked something within you, then share it. Share it with a friend, share it with a family member, and help us grow a community of dating dames. And if you're looking for a little bit of guidance or just some fun along the way, then come join us in socials at Facebook and Instagram at Dating Dames V2. And until next time, keep embracing the adventure, trust your instincts, and remember, it's not about him, it's about you.